Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my AM reading video for Friday, April 17th, 2020. It's already in the middle of the afternoon, and there's been some echoey banging going on all day outside, so let's just get to it. I have 3 books to talk about here, starting with the one I finished this week. This is In the Language of Miracles by Rajia Hassib. This is a debut novel about family drama, basically. The Al-Mansawis are a family that, an Egyptian-American family living in a New Jersey suburb with their 3 kids, and the oldest kid, Hossam, is in a relationship his whole life, friendship and girlfriendship, with their best friends and neighbors, the Bradstreets, so their daughter Natalie. And a year before the action of the book starts, Hossam and Natalie are both killed. And the way it goes down, which is not exactly what I was expecting going into this, is that they actually were having troubles in their relationship, and Hossam was having anger issues, and he incited her out of the house, and he shot her and then shot himself. And a year later, the general plot line of this novel follows the 5 days previous to a memorial that the Bradstreets are putting on for Natalie. And we're primarily sticking with the members of the Al-Mansawi family, the survivors, which would be his Hossam's 2 parents, his father Samir, who is this driven doctor who very much wanted to see his sons follow in his footsteps, and now he really wants to sort of reclaim his narrative because his family has been ostracized since this time. Then his mother Nagla, who has been struggling a lot with her grief and her mourning, and her own mother has moved in from Egypt to try to help her out and try to get the family moving again, but Nagla's moving rather slowly on recuperation. And then finally the son Khalid, who basically wants to get on with his life and assert himself away from his brother Hossam. I thought it was a good novel. I think one of the things I really liked the most about it, or impressed me the most, was the way that Hassib was able to employ Islam as a force of spiritual hope for these people without being too preachy or anything. There's just an idea about, well, I guess as an outsider and not going into it as much, the idea of submission and what that might mean to the grieving and moving on process, particularly for Khalid and a little bit for his mother Nagla. Nagla's story, I think, is the most interesting. In a way, it seems the most stereotypical because a lot of what she does in her narrative is question her husband's authoritarianism and why her mother always had to stand up for him, or her abusive father, and, you know, different ways that people might use religion in a pat, thought and prayers manner instead of something more serious or meaningful. I mean, she doesn't, you know, have an awakening and leave her faith, but it's interesting what she goes through in the narrative. I think hers is maybe the strongest. Samir is also pretty strong, I think. You know, him having to deal with feeling powerless and wanting to sort of reclaim his narrative from the perspective of his personality type that's kind of like boisterous and head of the household, kind of. I like that. And I also like how both Nagla and Samir view Nagla's mother as against them. And it's kind of like, you know, how your own narratives twist things about, I'm the one who's, you know, ostracized and alone, and they're against me, and I'm the poor one. I don't know. I like those parts. I think the rest of Khalid's story kind of was a bit iffy to me. He starts a blog about following monarch butterflies, which are on the cover, and he makes a Facebook page after he's been very much bullied and ostracized at school, and he just wants to sort of start a new identity with people who don't know him. So he creates a page, and he, you know, puts in all his biological interests on the page, and he makes friends with this girl Brittany who lives in New York, and he goes to visit her, and then she comes to visit him. But a lot of the particulars of that don't really make much sense to me, and I feel like it was just not that compelling to me. And the most compelling thing about that storyline was when Khalid actually told her the truth about his brother, and in the way of talking about his frustration with his relationship with his brother, and how his brother was a bully and was domineering. And of course, now that everyone in town sort of judges him based on what his brother did, how horrible that's been. So in a way, you know, I wanted Hossam to be more a part of the story, although I kind of get why he wasn't, especially since Hassib did this thing where she cast an Egyptian-born immigrant teenager, Muslim teenager, really as kind of the bad guy. I mean, that I went into this kind of thinking maybe he and Natalie had a suicide pact or something, and that they were both equally complicit in what happened, but that wasn't the truth. He was, you know, the instigator. He was kind of the bad guy, and it plays into a lot of stereotypes, of course, negative, violent stereotypes. So I can understand why she is saying, I don't want to focus on that character. I want to focus on his family, who he hurt just as much. But in a way, I guess that's why I wanted Hossam to be more part of the story, to show how victimized Khaled was by, you know, this bully, and trying to sort of make a name for himself maybe that way. I mean, it would need more work than that, maybe, probably. But that's just some thoughts I had. And other thoughts I had was the sister, Fatima, Hossam and Khaled's sister. She was not a primary character, a POV, and that felt odd to me. And here's an area where we could go in where Hossam maybe doesn't have to be as primary, but, you know, some of the things we find out about her are that she has a friend, and she's kind of growing more religious herself, and her family's a little about it, but her friend is the daughter of one of Nagla's friends, who Nagla's having trouble with, so there could be some really interesting push and pull between those two mother-daughter relationships. Or even, and maybe this is more stereotypical, Samir has this whole thing about, why aren't my sons wanting to be pre-meds? Why aren't they following in my footsteps? And in the epilogue, we learn that Fatima is the one prepping for med school. So, I don't know, you know, it seems rather stereotypical in a way to draw in the story of the neglected daughter who actually wants to follow in her patriarchal father's footsteps in that way. I mean, but, you know, anything could be done well, I guess. So, I don't know, I felt like maybe there were some lacking aspects to this. I felt like Fatima should have been a bigger character. It felt weird that she wasn't when the rest of her immediate family was. I thought Khaled's story was a little lacking in some areas, but not when it came to him and his sort of the climax of the story, and sort of coming to peace with some things, and how it went into religion. I liked that, and I liked a lot of what the parents were dealing with. So overall, I thought this was a really good debut, a good start for this author, and I'm really hoping her second book comes in the mail soon. You know, it's one of those things that I ordered last month, and it's probably going to be sitting in a warehouse till coronavirus is over, but I'll definitely want to read it when it comes here. Next, I just started listening on audiobook to Tar Baby by Toni Morrison. This I'm reading ostensibly for Toni Morrison 2020, the Voxer group started by Hannah at Hannah's Books. I also had an idea that before Hannah reached out to me, that I wanted to read through all of Morrison's novels this year, and even though the Voxer group has kind of slowed down because of coronavirus, I kind of wanted to keep going with my one book a month thing, just to keep on track of that. I don't know, I hope I'll be able to talk about this book and Song of Solomon with the group starting soon enough. But anyway, that's where I am in that part. So I'm only a couple of chapters into Tar Baby. The first thing I thought about is that Tar Baby is actually a secondary character in Morrison's second novel, Sula. But I don't think it's the same character at all. I read a little bit into the Wikipedia page for this novel, and it talked about how Morrison saw Tar Baby, sort of the stereotype of the Tar Baby as a strong black woman, and Tar Baby in Sula was a inebriated white man. So, you know, I'm not sure why this book is named it after that, or maybe I have some idea, because I actually did go into Wikipedia and I read a little bit of a John Irving review about this book after I got a couple chapters in, because this is kind of difficult to listen to on audio. I think Morrison would not be my choice for audio. It's just I have limited options because of coronavirus. I've been thinking a lot about Morrison as an author. I think she's a very strong writer, but she's challenging me in that way of Well, I'm several years out of school now, and I felt like I was pretty confident with myself as a reader and as an analyzer and as a thinker, but she is so symbolic and metaphorical that her stuff is really the stuff that's made for the English classroom. And I mean, even just after 2 chapters, I was realizing that I kind of missed a couple of things in it, some of the details. So I don't know, she's kind of challenging me. I don't really think her style is my favorite. I like less lyrical, less symbolic writing, and something that's much more based on realism and character analysis in that way, where she's much more invested, I guess, in the characters being stand-ins for her ideas. I mean, I can't fault her on it. The writing is amazing. The ideas are compelling. You know, Irving went on a tangent about how much he disliked her dialogue, which I don't know why he's picking on it in this book, because it's been the same in all of her books that I've read the first 4 now, or the first 3 and however much of this, and the dialogue's been the same, and it's always been, I think, the most strong part of her character building. Like, you just can feel like you're a fly on the wall with these characters with their strong sense of self coming out through the dialogue. So that's sort of the type of writer she is as well. But anywho, this novel takes place on a Caribbean island. The backdrop is this home that's owned by a white couple in their sort of retirement, and they have 2 black domestics, a butler and a cook that work for them. So there's some interesting push and pull there about these privileged white folks. They're not horrible people, but they're definitely privileged white folks, and this other couple who works for them and has to put up with their whims, and there's a lot of interesting interplay about how especially the white wife misses being on the mainland, and here they are on an island where she can't easily get her favorite foods and that sort of thing. Anyway, I believe the main character we've been introduced to is actually the niece of this butler and this cook, Jadine, who actually is a beneficiary of the white couple, who I believe has even sent her to Paris to model and that sort of thing. So she has a bit of an education and would generally be seen as a sort of a more well-bred person. And I believe later on in the story, as I've spoiled myself, she's going to get into a relationship with a less well-off across the class tracks, a black man, and that'll, you know, showcase a lot of the divisions within her family and her benefactors and how they view race. I believe this is taking place in the 70s. Morrison wrote it in 81, I believe. So I'm intrigued. I think it's going to be a really interesting, thought-provoking ride. And I have to get to it to finish it all soon, because I'm at the tail end of my library hold, and it'll, you know, be snatched away from me in a few days. So chop chop. And after that, I will be moving on to this book. This is Maybe You Should Talk to Someone, a therapist, her therapist, and our lives revealed by Lori Gottlieb. This, I believe, is a partial memoir book about Lori Gottlieb, who is a therapist herself. She'll be talking about what her takeaways from some of the sessions she's had with her own patients. Of course, I'm sure they'll be protected, privacy protected, that sort of thing. And then also she'll be talking about her relationship with her own therapist and what she kind of learns about herself. And all of this will be about humans, I hope, and how our psychology works. That's what I'm going into this with, but that's all I will be telling you about this book for a while now, because I am reading this for the BookTube Prize quarterfinals. The BookTube Prize is an annual prize given on BookTube for literary fiction and nonfiction to whittle down to the best book of the year, and I am one of several judges that are judging in the quarterfinals, and we will be submitting our ballots with the 6 books in our groups at the end of May, and until then, I can't say anything about this book and what I think about it, so I'll have it back up in a couple months, and in the meantime, you can learn about the BookTube Prize with links I have down below. So that that about covers it for me now. Hi everyone, I'm actually refilming this because as I started editing my video, I got some exciting news in the mail. Please forgive the sounds of a crazy cat attacking a bag in the background, but I just got email confirmation that I can take part in the BookTube Prize talks for nonfiction tomorrow, so I'm so excited. The BookTube Prize talks are being facilitated by the prize's new social media manager, and it's focusing on the process of the octafinals. So I'll be joining, I believe, 4 other nonfiction judges for the octafinals in a talk that will be broadcast tomorrow. And then next Saturday, some of the octafinal fiction judges will be talking about their process. So I'm really excited to take part and also to hear what other people have to say in both of the divisions. So I'll link information down below, and I hope you can join us. So anyway, thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I hope to see you with the BookTube Prize tomorrow.